This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. 2023, baby, we made it. We're here, and it's time to talk about the best movies that came out this year. It was a busy year for films. I watched more movies this year than I have in a long time, which made narrowing down this list pretty difficult. And also, let's get right into it. Let's start with some honorable mentions, which include All of Us Strangers, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, Dream Scenario, Rotting in the Sun, Monster, Across the Spider-Verse, Godzilla -1, The Killer, and Bottoms. Now that that's out of the way, at number 20 is Ari Aster's Beau is Afraid. At number 19 is Matt Johnson's Blackberry. At number 18 is Sofia Coppola's Priscilla. Number 17 is Molly Manning Walker's How to Have Sex. And at number 16 is Rain Allen Miller's Rye Lane. At number 15 is Molly Gordon and Nick Lieberman's Theater Camp, the closest thing we have to a modern Christopher Guest film, and a movie I initially wrote off as simply being hilarious that is in retrospect a very heartfelt love letter to theater and adolescence. Number 14 is Greta Gerwig's Barbie. I still can't believe this one exists. Arguably the most entertaining thing I saw this year, mouth-watering production design, a hilarious screenplay, and a surprisingly moving and unique story that sticks its landing. This is the best possible outcome for a Barbie movie. Number 13 goes to Wes Anderson's Asteroid City, one of Wes Anderson's most unique and ambitious films. I feel like a lot of legendary filmmakers made movies where they reflected on their own work this year, and Wes takes the cake for doing so in the most unexpected and rewarding way. This one will stick with me for a long time. Number 12 goes to Brandon Cronenberg's Infinity Pool, a widely misunderstood movie in my opinion, probably the most sickening and ridiculous way I've ever seen someone cope with being a nepotism baby, and also the most interesting Eat the Rich movie of the last few years. I respect the hell out of this and had too much fun for it not to be this high on the list. And lastly, at number 11 is Alexander Payne's The Holdovers, quite simply the most likable movie of the year. This film is so authentic, which in some ways makes you want to cry, but it's the bond that these characters share that gives it a hopeful quality. When the tragedy feels real, the comfort does too, and that's why this resonated with me and so many other people. We needed this one. This was so close to cracking the top 10, it actually is physically painful for me to put it here, but that just speaks to how great these next few films are. Without any further ado, let's do the top 10. Past Lives is one of the strongest directorial debuts I've ever seen. Some have claimed it as being a little on the surface, but that honesty is what makes it so compelling. It's able to get away with how by the book some of it feels by presenting these ideas in some really intimate scenes that felt honestly too real at times. This did hit as hard as it did for me because of how familiar a lot of it felt. It's one of those movies where it feels like the filmmaker knew me personally, but it doesn't get there just by coincidence. Song's direction is gentle and simple. It reminds me of the Before trilogy and just how subjective the perspective of it all is. Oftentimes the camera will just sit in one spot far away from the characters, and the performance and script will have to do the heavy lifting. And what you get from this approach is that gooey romantic ache, but also a sense of groundedness. For that reason, I found Past Lives to be both extremely comforting and also devastating. Certain relationships are meant to be and also meant to break. Anatomy of a Fall fooled me. I came in expecting a pretty good courtroom drama, like the one the title of the film is based on, only for the film to then play with my own beliefs on what did or didn't happen, which was thrilling on its own, but as Anatomy of a Fall continues to unravel itself, as the trial gets messier, the film then turns into a movie about relationships, guilt, jealousy, and our actions being amplified in ways we don't expect them to be. A film toying with morals and the modern consequences our actions have is nothing new, yet Anatomy of a Fall is unlike anything I've ever seen. I haven't seen a ton of people talk about the look of the film, which is constantly switching up on you. The beginning is chaotic and messy, a blend of news footage, phone footage, digital zooms, everything is so deliberately distant and behind a screen. And deeper into the film, you get these gorgeously lit yet claustrophobic courtroom scenes with little space to breathe. The film is so aware of what it does and doesn't show you. You're never spoon-fed what actually happened or what the film wants you to feel, in the end asking you to look inside and rethink your own beliefs. All of that said, it's one of the most thought-provoking films of the year. In a year full of movies I was itching to see, Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron was hands down my most anticipated. Which is to say, obviously there was some bias going into this. I'll admit to feeling a little like, there's no way I don't love this. And I did love it, but what I didn't expect was how much I walked away from this with. As I mentioned in my first review for this thing, Miyazaki went ahead and made the most Miyazaki movie he's ever made, which is a very good thing. His gifted style of world building has not been this strong since Spirited Away, in my opinion. Much of this film feels like a dream. It is so hard to get this dream dreamy, nightmarish type of surrealism right, and I'm reminded of that every time I watch a Miyazaki movie and realize everyone else is leagues behind him. This is a quality the film could rely on and still come out pretty strong, but what takes the thing a step further is the optimistic perspective it has on death and legacy. I know he apparently has another one in him, but I can't think of a more beautiful way to cap off a legendary career. For a while, when I looked at my list and saw showing up on it, I kind of just thought to myself that this is a very personal pick, a movie that only resonated with me as much as it did for personal reasons. To get a little too honest, I've been trying really hard to get things made this year. Short films, a feature film, random specs, even a music video, many of which fall apart, don't feel as fulfilling as I want them to be, or just disappear altogether. The point is, making art is a frustrating and a lot of the time unrewarding process, something I don't feel is talked about enough, let alone seen on film. It's something that I think Showing Up captures at such a visceral level. It's way more than that, but I do think the heart of this film comes from this place of wanting to create clashing with real-life responsibilities, and how it's equally as necessary. And the fact that it's Kelly Reichardt of all people telling the story, well, that just makes it much more interesting to me. It is quiet and unassuming, but I find the restraint of her filmmaking confident, inspiring, and daring. By being as honest and as specific as she is, Reichardt is able to express the frustrating yet essential feeling to create in a universally felt way. Oppenheimer has clearly grown on me. A lot. I can't remember the last time I saw a movie that stayed in my head this long. I mean, I could talk about the scale of the cinematography, how he used his style inside of confined office spaces to heighten these tensions, or I could talk about the sound design and how Ludwig Göransson's addicting score gently guides you through the 3-hour runtime. But technically speaking, we all knew it would be great. On an emotional level, this is something really special. Weeks after Oppenheimer, I was still reeling from the experience. It was still fresh in my head. I don't think the film has gotten enough credit for just how weird it is. I mean, most of the film cuts like a montage, and for one of the biggest box office smashes of the year, that's crazy. I've been trying to come up with any other word to use to describe the cut of this film, but poetic really is the best way I can describe it. I know, I just rolled my eyes too. But it is. It's loose yet emotionally visceral. It feels like visual poetry to me. And that said, I don't think Nolan has ever made something this psychologically compelling. You're always at arm's length to Oppenheimer, yet you feel disturbingly close to his inner psyche, which is what keeps it moving in your head well after you've seen it. There were a lot of films this year that grappled with what's right and what's wrong, people coming to terms with what their own beliefs are, and the filmmaker asking the viewer to do the same. And for Nolan to take this idea and apply it to arguably the most fascinating man I can think of, one of the most important men in history, well, no wonder I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. It's large and it's a bit overwhelming off of first viewing, but man does it prove what cinema is capable of. It seems a little crazy to follow up arguably the biggest movie on this list with something as quaint as Aki Kaurismäki's Fallen Leaves. But Fallen Leaves, like Oppenheimer, is one of the strongest examples of a legendary auteur working at the top of his game. I haven't watched a ton of his films, but this is the most a Kaurismäki film has ever hit for me. As mentioned in past videos, it's Kaurismäki's deadpan and dry style that, if anything, allows his moments of warmth and connection to shine, and Fallen Leaves is one of his warmest movies. Despite being so deadpan, I do think this is the most romantic movie I saw this year for that reason. Only in film can you take the smallest details of life and use them to communicate what it feels to long for connection. All captured in Kaurismäki's distinct visual language, I do think this is one of the best looking movies of the year. Why aren't more filmmakers paying attention to their use of light like this? His lighting, not to go off on a tangent here, is a visual representation of what his films do emotionally. There's barely any light in these rooms. Even the exteriors are almost always overcast. But when there is light, it's bright, and it shines directly on the characters. To be in love is to beam. To make something that feels this complete and this human in just 80 minutes is frankly magical. I left this loving the people around me a bit more, loving what it feels like to be in love, and I just in general got way more than I asked for with this one. I really loved this movie. Passages is funny. I don't know why I want to keep calling this the sexy version of Uncut Gems. Maybe because it's literally just a guy continuing to ruin his own life and the lives of everyone around him. but he makes it sexy. But I do think that gets to the heart of what it is about this film that really resonated with me. Tomas is addicted to control and not being alone. It makes sense why he's such a successful filmmaker in the movie. And Ira Sachs sends him down this toxic spiral where connection and intimacy is something to acquire. The idea of it fulfills him, not the actual feeling. Through this, Ira Sachs brilliantly deconstructs the value of love and lust, and less what it means to live with these things and more what it means to live without them. The film feels relatively straightforward. The actions feel natural and at times insignificant. But not only is the film sexy, but it's this sexy quality that lures you in the way it does the characters, which makes you feel just as empty and abandoned as they do in the end. But it's this hidden destructiveness that only starts to show itself in the end that makes the film so effective and tragic. Not to mention Franz Rogowski, who has been one of my favorite actors of the last few years, delivering, in my opinion, his most layered performance yet here. My favorite movies are those that can stress me the hell out, make me feel embarrassingly seen on screen, and can also make me laugh. Passages does it all. It's not the biggest or most ambitious of the year by any means, but you certainly get the most bang for your buck in this one, and it's the one I just keep wanting to rewatch over and over again. Martin Scorsese has been on a real hot streak these last few years. No, his last few films, Wolf of Wall Street, Silence, and The Irishman, have all shared a reflective quality about them, looking back at his own themes, his own work, and adding a wiser, more critical perspective on the stories he's told and the characters in these stories. It's a perspective few filmmakers as giant as Scorsese can properly examine. And Killers of the Flower Moon, in my opinion, has quickly become my favorite of this stage in his career. Not only is Flower Moon a riveting epic that's engulfed me both times I saw it, mostly thanks to Thelma Shoemaker's masterful edit. Not only does Lily Gladstone deliver one of the most powerful performances of the year, a performance that glues your eyes to the screen every second she's on it. No, what really sets Flower Moon apart is its fearlessness. Scorsese didn't need to prove himself as a fearless filmmaker at this stage in his career. He's been proving that since the 70s. But he decided to go into a new genre, a Western, this late into his career, and tackled subject matter as sensitive as the Osage murders, which is admirable on its own, especially considering he pulled it off. But to take themes he's built on and explored his entire career and to apply them to a story like this not only recontextualizes this history in a way that resonates on a deeper level to certain audiences, but it also recontextualizes his own work. The film not only commentates on how exploitative true crime has become, but it takes the genre and does it the right way. For these reasons, I found Killers of the Flower Moon to be quite possibly the most urgent movie of the year. Since The Favorite, I've been on the edge of my seat for the next Yorgos Lanthimos film, and after a pretty ridiculous and consistent run, leave it to him to not only make something unlike anything he's ever made before, but also possibly the best thing he's ever made. In Poor Things, Lanthimos takes all his strongest trademarks, his dry yet absurd humor, his witty examination of societal norms, his fascination with sexuality and bodies, and he molds them into a sort of epic tale about a woman who's given a second chance at life. What I find so fascinating about Poor Things is how much it takes advantage of all the weird possibilities that come with its premise. It gets as horny as it should get. It gets as disgusting as it should get, as silly as it should get. Yet, for how graphic and sometimes vulgar the film is, it's weirdly one of the most empowering movies of the year. There's so much more heart in this movie than I was expecting. In being fearless, the film ends up being a kind of freeing experience for both the characters and the audience. Nothing is off the table, and it asks a lot of questions of what we can and can't do and why we can and can't do those things. Not to mention, it's the most gorgeous looking movie I've seen all year. Not one shot is wasted in this film, whether it's an unexpected zoom, a wide lens, a super wide lens, or just a really artificial looking version of Paris. Something interesting is always being done to the frame. And for it to keep itself that interesting for well over 2 hours is beyond impressive to me. That goes for the camera work, the performances, the score, the dialogue. Don't even get me started on the production design. Ari Aster described it as looking like the Cheesecake Factory, which describes it better than I ever could. I've never seen anything like Poor Things, and it made me feel a lot more than I was expecting. It's a one-of-a-kind masterpiece I'm sure I'll be thinking about for the rest of my life. And before we get into number one, I wanted to shout out some of the other end-of-the-year stats. My least favorite movie of the year was Exorcist Believer. My favorite album of the year was James Blake's Playing Robots into Heaven. My favorite song of the year was Oral by Bjork and Rosalia. And my favorite show of the year was Succession, obviously. And all that said, my favorite movie of the year was... This is the first year in a very long time where deciding on my number one movie was a breeze. Looking back at it, May December was the only choice all along. When it comes to which film sucked me in the most, which stuck with me the longest, and which was the most technically proficient, May December checks off all the boxes. I also don't think enough people are talking about how, similar to Nolan, Scorsese, Miyazaki, Wes Anderson, Todd Haynes made a film that felt like the most Todd Haynes film he's ever made, exploring familiar themes like tabloid culture, appearance, performance, sexuality, all under one twisted and bizarre umbrella. It's the amount of conflicting tones Haynes is able to balance that makes it entirely unique and endlessly rewatchable. I've only seen it twice now, and both times felt very different from one another, and rewarding in different ways, which to me is always the sign of a great piece of work. The film takes place in 2013, yet Haynes gives it an almost periodless quality, making you feel like it could take place at any time, which not only makes the film timeless, but also uniquely human, right? There's a terrifying realization at one point in the film that this vicious cycle of ownership, for lack of a better term, is just part of the human experience, as if we're animals and this is part of our nature. To quote the best line in the film, this is just what grown-ups do, which only makes tiny moments of freedom, of breaking the cycle, like letting a butterfly loose, feel triumphant. The film is dark and devastating and tragic, but it's also a testament to our abilities to break cycles and build better futures, a privilege unique to being human, that I suppose paints the film in a pretty optimistic light, which feels crazy considering just how dark it actually is. Because at the same time, the film is about people stealing the lives of others, essentially. Gracie taking away years of Joe's life, Elizabeth coming in and ripping away Gracie's identity. It's a riveting, often soapy experience that has fascinated me well after watching it, and that's thanks to just how complex these characters are. And at the same time, the film has managed to spark some of the most annoying discourse I've seen this year over whether it's a comedy or not, which is only worth bringing up because I think it not only speaks to the film's strength of blending tones almost too well, but also speaks to how unique this film is, how it's challenging to try and pin down what exactly it is. For these reasons, and probably many more, I couldn't see myself giving any other film this year the top spot. This is a flat-out masterpiece and an instant classic that will continue to provoke and fascinate for years. And those are my top 20 films of 2023. As always, there are some films I didn't see this year that could have made this list, which are on the screen right now. When I do see these, if they make the list, I'll be updating the list on Letterboxd at the link in the description. But hey, thanks for another great year. I love you guys. I really do. Thank you for watching my videos and allowing me to have one of the coolest gigs in the entire world. It's insane to me. If things go according to plan, 2024 is gonna be pretty crazy. All that said, keep watching movies, keep forming your own opinions, and have a great new year. Thanks for watching, and one more time, I want to thank this week's sponsor, Squarespace, the best place to go to build a website and make that idea of yours come to life. They have a wonderful feature called Fluid Engine, which is a next-generation website design system that allows you to customize every design detail with reimagined drag-and-drop technology. I'm a big fan of their video collection feature for obvious reasons. It allows me to host video content, organize your video library, and showcase your content on beautiful video pages for desktop or mobile. And my favorite part is that they have an asset library which allows you to upload, organize, and access all your files from one central hub and use them across the Squarespace platform. With New Year's right around the corner, I feel like now is the perfect time to finally make that beautiful website you've always wanted to make, and make that website with Squarespace. You can go to squarespace.com to start your free trial, and when you're ready to launch that beautiful website, go to squarespace.com/Karsten and get 10% off of your first purchase. Thank you, Squarespace, for all the support. Thank you guys for a wonderful year. I will see you in the next one.